Good morning, everyone. I hope you got out yesterday afternoon and got some direct sunlight because it doesn't appear that you're going to get it today. It is cloudy today. You still have some light, but it's not the direct sunlight we were getting yesterday, and we all know how much we love that direct sunlight. If you don't understand what we're talking about, you need to come live here for a couple of years and see what it's like not to have direct sunlight for a few months. So you learn to love the direct sunlight for about 3 weeks, and then everybody starts complaining about, I can't sleep. But that's neither here nor there. We have a very special video coming up. I don't know what to call it. It's an interview with Amanda Blackwood. That will be Wednesday at 10 a.m. I hope everyone can tune in. It is about human trafficking. We do take a small look at human trafficking here in Alaska, but we don't go real in depth about in Alaska. We primarily talk about Amanda's experience in her life. But I really want you to tune in because this is a very fascinating and needed topic to discuss. I have never been one to shy away from topics that people don't like or the ones that make people feel bad. I don't know why that is, but I always go for the things that seem to be hard. And one of those hard things that we're going to discuss is today. And we're going to go to 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13, which reading from I think I got the CEV today. You are tempted in the same way that everyone else is tempted, but God can be trusted not to let you be tempted too much. And he will show you how to escape from your temptations. We as a people tend to put this in isolation from verses 12 and 14 in the paragraphs prior to even 12. But let's take a look at this one verse and see what we can dig out of it. The first thing I immediately found out was that there are two ways the word tempted can be translated. I am not a Greek scholar. I am not a Hebrew scholar, nor am I a Chaldean scholar. I learned a few Spanish words when I was younger, but I don't use them so much anymore. But the word tempted, to my understanding, can be translated in two ways here. It can be translated tempted as meaning being drawn to commit a sin, or it can mean to be tried, going through trials, hard times. So if you take it as being tempted, or you take it as being going through the hard times, trials, it really doesn't change the meaning of the verse that much, because it's saying the same thing, just in a different way. So as we move on through the verse, we see that it's not uncommon for humans to be tempted or tried. We all have problems that we deal with. We all have trials that we have to go through. And we all have problems. That's not uncommon. It's not uncommon for Satan to try to get us to commit a sin. We all face that. Even me. I have a lot of alphabet soup on the front of my name. But guess what? I'm not special. Yes, you heard me. I'm not special. And guess what? When it comes to life, you're not that special either. We all, when we go through hard times and trials and temptations and all this fun stuff, oh, poor me, this can only happen to me. As I tend to put it, my middle name is Murphy. But guess what? I'm not the only Murphy person out there. We all tend to feel like we're Murphy. Murphy's Law just seems to reign. And if you don't know what Murphy's Law is, Murphy's Law states, if it can go wrong, it will go wrong. So we all feel that way. No matter who we are, we always think life is falling apart most of the time. It's very rare you find a person who says, oh, everything's going wonderful right now. My usual comment is, I'm alive. And a lot of people go, that's awful negative. And I'm like, it's not negative. Considering the things I've lived through, I think it's an accomplishment. I am happy to be alive. Now, some people would dare argue that that depends on which side of the life insurance policy you're on. Go figure. So it's not uncommon to go through temptation. It's not uncommon to go through trials. What becomes a problem as when we put ourselves in a place to be tempted to sin. When we purposely go to a place where we know we have a weakness, such as I will use the bakery. That's one I often use. I love German chocolate cake. That's one of my favorite cakes. But my midsection tells me that I do not need to eat German chocolate cake. I don't need to eat donuts either, Dave, just so you know. I don't go to the bakery whenever we don't have a bakery, but I don't go to a bakery knowing I have a problem with my midsection and I love German chocolate cake. That is not a temptation that I need because I really like German chocolate cake. If your temptation is stealing, if your temptation is adultery, if your temptation is getting drunk, if your temptation is lying, don't put yourself in a position to where you'll commit that sin. Now, it's also true about going through a hard time. If you know your car is running out of gas and you pass 5 gas stations and you get out in the middle of nowhere and run out of gas, don't be upset that you ran out of gas. You put yourself in that position. It is the trials and the temptations we have no control over that we're talking about here. When we put ourselves in the place to be tempted or tried, what we're really doing is we're testing God. We're putting God on the spot saying, okay, God, I'm in this position. What are you going to do about it? And that is the wrong attitude to have. If you got that kind of attitude, you probably aren't living up to the standards of God in other places as well. And you really need to pray. You really need to study your scriptures and get in a position with God that you don't have such an attitude. We have to remember that God will never tempt us to sin. God's not in the sin business. God is in the redemption business. God is in the business of getting us clean from sin. Remember, Jesus died on the cross to wipe away our sin, to put us in a position to where the Spirit dwells within us and we don't have to sin. However, God will allow you to go through hard times. One of the hardest things for me to do is to watch my children go through hard times, especially when I have told them, this is the best answer for you to take care of this. Sometimes they listen, sometimes they don't. And imagine that's how God feels when we are going through a rough time and he says, well, this is what you need to do, and we don't listen. It is a growing process. It is a learning process. The trick to it is when you go through a hard time is not to sin. When Job was going through his hard time, what was it that his wife kept telling him? Just blaspheme God and die. And he said, I can't do that. I cannot go against the living God. That's the attitude we need to have because we grow during our hard times. I know we don't like to hear that, but it is true. We grow. So God is faithful in our trials and temptations. He's going to be right there with us. And a lot of times we don't recognize God when we are faced with these things because all we can see is what is the problem. As I have learned to do, take some steps back and look around. Look what's to your left. Look what's to the right. Look at what's in front of you. And when you begin to be, as I have been taught to call it, situationally aware, then you'll be able to see God working in your life. And sometimes he's going to work in ways that you may not understand or may not even like. But God is there. You're not alone. And when God said, let me rephrase this in English. God will not allow more than you can stand. Even if you think you're at your limit. You see, when we're in pain, when we don't enjoy something, when we think it's hard, we cry. We have a new cat in our house, and about 2 a.m, the cat wakes up and wants to play. The cat finds that it's by itself because we're all asleep. And if we ignore the cat goes back to sleep. We don't want to be like the cat. We don't want to cry every time we find something we don't like. But rather, we need to put our trust in God because God is faithful and he knows us better than we know ourselves, and he knows our breaking points. And when we are growing in these areas that we are weaker in, it seems like we're going to snap and it seems like we're going to break. But when we trust in God, He knows how much we can take. And when God sees us that we are about to break, where we are about to fall, He makes for us a way so we don't have to. We don't have to sin. God makes a way of escape. God makes a way out, makes a means by which we don't have to sin when we're tempted. God makes a way where we don't have to go to our breaking point when He sees us getting near it. The thing is this: we have to have enough Jesus in us, meaning we have to have that relationship with Him, to where when we are in our hard times, when we are facing temptations, we see the direction God wants to go. Because if we don't have enough in Him, we don't have enough of Him in us, meaning we are not doing our spiritual disciplines, then it's going to be harder to see. And there's a chance that we'll fall of our own fault. And with that, always remember God is faithful. God is there for you. Start praying and you'll see. Have a good one.